Welcome back to Dirty Pretty, the space where we own our feelings, honor our experience, share unfiltered truths, and talk shit, all through the lens of love. Today, our world will be painted in floral hues of optimism, love, and the divine feminine through the auspicious mind of Erin Nutter. Specializing in art prints, paper goods, and other giftable items, Erin is a self-taught watercolor artist, an experienced designer located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her artistic approach to painting reflects both a youthful curiosity and the internalized maximism of a neurodivergent mind. Through an art-centered lifestyle brand called Erin West, Erin employs an intuitive approach to her craft, favoring a spontaneous and unpredictable nature that aims to provide viewers with a unified sensation through watercolor. Erin's work invites us all to enjoy a complete presence and to enter a flow state of meditation through paint. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Of course, Erin and I are personal friends. We met living in Charlotte through yoga. Namaste, my friend. And she is a very talented artist. You can see some of her work behind you. That's your work, right?
Yes, yes, it is on the wall.
She she is very talented. As I mentioned in the introduction, she's self-taught. And so I found that it would be a really great idea to have an interview with someone who didn't go to school necessarily for the things that you're doing currently, but decided that it made sense for you to take on this because it was a part of your essence, correct? It just kind of it drew you to this profession, correct?
Yes, my path was a little bit sideways, but it definitely led into this direction. And when I found it, I was able to cultivate a better path, for myself.
Yes, and so just give the people watching an idea. I didn't mention it in your introduction per se, but give people like where you came from and kind of how you got here.
Sure. I grew up in Northern Virginia, born in North Carolina, but left very young. Grew up in Northern Virginia, suburbs of DC. Decided to move to Los Angeles, influenced by my dance studio of all things. So I didn't pursue dance as a career, but it brought me out there, introduced me to Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles for college and I decided to pursue the visual arts instead of the performing arts. I was historically a performing artist, but when I got to Los Angeles, interestingly enough, I pivoted for education purposes. So I wasn't a really great artist. I wasn't a really adept. I took a Photoshop graphic design class in high school, which I guess introduced me a little bit early on. And I studied photography just as much as I did graphic design in college, even though I didn't major in that. But the biggest influence for me was my school had a really great fashion program, and a lot of the friends that I developed in college were fashion students. And so they introduced me pretty early on to the classifieds and job listings for that particular career, which was really great. In Los Angeles at the time, it looks a lot different now. And I got a job right away as an apparel graphic designer for LEI denim for any of my old school girlies who who remember
Like I
that.
remember.
Yeah. Which was really cool because that was the name I knew. It was like getting a job at like a recognizable brand at the
Yeah.
time, right out of college. So that was really cool. And through that, I was introduced to textile design, which is sort of an offshoot. So instead of, the athletic department graphics that I was doing for teenage girls, we started to do all over prints. So little icons, bunny rabbits, very simple things, flowers. But when I sort of discovered that as an art form, which was very familiar to me, but new to me in an occupational concept, it really was like, oh, this is this is exciting. This is really cool.
So
And
I want to interrupt you for a second. When you say this, right? This is really exciting. This is really cool. The transition from creating like the athletic.
graphics, yeah, graphics from a t-shirt, which I loved. I really love t-shirts. I really love graphics. It was a part of my personal style, and so it felt authentic to me. But it was more challenging as a new designer.
Cool.
And when I found fashion textiles, so like your beautiful, mesh lace embroidered, yeah. from printed, for me, I have a deep love of vintage 60s and 70s textiles.
Mm.
Registration where the colors are slightly overlapping and bright colors. And so when I discovered that like somebody could get paid to make this for a living, to research it, to buy it, to develop it, for companies and get paid to do it, it felt like I was discovering a calling. It sounds so silly to say that. Um,
No.
I love like a real, it clicked. It clicked. And
Hmm.
so that was the biggest influence in my career and what I probably have called myself for the longest chunk of my career, a textile designer.
And so from textile, tell us how you became a print artist and a paper goods artist and a watercolor
Okay.
artist.
Well, thankfully, when I did major in graphic design in college, it introduced me to typography and font design and logos and branding, and advertising. And so I had at least a little bit of familiarity with those concepts. And then specifically with painting, because I was really not an artist. I was a clip artist at first. And so job descriptions would be like, no, clip artists, apply. And that means I'm just taking other people's assets from all kinds of books that used to exist in, or even like fonts you would download would be filled with these little dingbats. And so I was just using those and arranging those at first. And then eventually I had to grow up, and develop as an artist and get better. And exploring illustration through textile design, because as a textile designer, you needed to create a range of looks and effects from black and white watercolor to rendered pencil birds,
Wow.
on a woman's. And so, and a lot of it was just handed down from the art directors or the creative directors. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And then eventually I opened up my own, I left the companies and I started my own textile design studio, which didn't exist in multitude in Los Angeles. There was a lot of buying of textile designs in Los Angeles, but most of the studios were in London or New York or Paris. And here I am thinking I can do this, which is crazy. I think most of my entrepreneurial skill is being delusional and crazy and thinking I can do this. Um, and so I started, when Paul came over here and we got married and he got his green card and was legit to work, he started working and it gave me an opportunity to work from home, do freelance for the various companies that I had relationships with from my past and friends who worked in the industry who would feed me opportunities. And then I started creating textile designs and Paul's a big part of my success because he does my website, consults on my branding, and really helps me think things through on the business and design end because he comes from a
Nice.
design background as well. And um, and so my textile design studio I was printing on fabric that I was running, like I was ironing it down to wax paper and then running it through my little like Epson printer at home and then making appointments with companies and showing them these headers on fabric. And then I began to have artists working for me, submitting designs, and I would try to sell it for them. Um, and so I ran that business for a while, for like 5 years in Los Angeles under the name Aaron West. So that was the first iteration of my company. And it was less personal. It wasn't about me. It was about all these, whatever you need, right? And it was business to business. I'm not selling to the customer. I was selling to fashion suppliers, textile mills, Forever 21, PacSun, like all kinds of, recognizable names as well. And then my daughter came and financial situations got a bit more real. And then the ability to like, do it all with her at home got unsustainable.
Mm.
And it was time for me to pivot back to the corporate world, which I did in Los Angeles and then came to North Carolina, both with corporate fashion jobs. One, I worked for Torrid in Los Angeles, and then I came here and was working for Belk, the big department store, at their corporate office. And then the pandemic came, and like literally, this is just how it happened. I had I was making the most money I'd ever made at my last corporate design job. Loved the office, loved my friends, probably happier than everybody else because again, that's just me. Um, but not utilizing my skills. I was making a lot of like plaid button down shirts for, again, a juniors brand. I've worked in a lot of juniors fashion. Um, Not necessarily even textile design, recoloring other people's artworks, doing pajamas. Like it was fun. It was not purposeful. Um, it didn't engage me with my community that much, but it paid me the most I'd ever made in my job and it gave me good benefits. And I got to take maternity leave and kind of get some pay for it, which I didn't get working for myself. And then the pandemic happened. And man, that was like the best, worst thing that ever happened to me.
It's like when we met around
Um,
pandemic, like right after the pandemic, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So, which is the only reason I started taking yoga because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. For
Same.
years, I was like, maybe if I moved to North Carolina, I had a vision, a very vague, loose vision that maybe one day in North Carolina, I could be able to afford a lifestyle where I don't have to make so much money and I work for myself. And maybe I get a yoga teaching certification and maybe I'm teaching yoga. And it was this like fantasy vision I had that didn't have a lot of form or clarity to it. And oh my God, right now I am living the dream.
I was going to say, which, by the way, I don't have to blow up your spot. These things have checked the boxes and happen.
Well, and I had been thinking about them probably like as long as 7 or 8 years ago. So it's taken a long time to come to fruition. But like it's also something I just couldn't do in Los Angeles. Like my husband will be making more money, but dude, my last job, it was an hour and a half commute each way
Oh, no.
in regular traffic. So if like there was a bad accident and I happened to see the coroner's van on my drive home, which happened more than once,
Oh, my God.
um, then it was like 2 hours each way. And I loved the area I lived in and I liked my job, but like, yeah, life in Los Angeles became unsustainable for us. Um,
So in North Carolina, then the pandemic hits, and then what? Like you're like, I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna start doing print work, or like what?
Yeah, so I had by then, I guess, okay, so where I'll back up for just a brief moment is to say that through my working for myself as a textile designer, one of my clients came to me and was like, we want to print like this. And I don't want to say I knocked it off, but your clients want something. I'm doing the best I can to like give them something new and different and legally safe,
Sure.
but really still give them kind of what they want. And it was a watercolor floral, this beautiful, inky, multicolor blended, beautiful piece which I recognized. They brought it to me and I was like, okay, I know this from Pinterest. And so it gave me an excuse to go buy the materials that I thought were used and give it a try and give them their print. But I fell in love with the materials and I was in love with the artist who made the inspiration they brought to me. So which is why I recognized it because I'm really drawn to inky watercolors, I guess. They're very ethereal. They're not super realistic. It's a hint of something. Fashion illustrations, I don't do them, but I love loose, colorful watercolor fashion illustrations. And um, and so in my own personal work, I had been exploring it over a couple of years, had given away a couple paintings to some friends, had taken a couple photos of it, shared it on social media. But when the pandemic happened probably mainly out of my own mental health needs. I scanned in a bunch of the artwork and created an Etsy shop. I already had greeting cards because I'm just doing this for fun at this point to send like when one of my friends, my best friends had a baby shower for me, it was mushroom and fairy themed. And after
Oh,
that, I made my own greeting card, like thank you cards to send to my friends. And I made, anyway, I just like, as a graphic designer, I know a company who can do that online. And so I have access to those print on demand resources. So I started an Etsy shop and I think it was just a general culture at the time. Everyone was like, holy shit, what's going on?
yeah.
You know, people were buying my art to support me and also like, what? We didn't know you could. so many people were like, you could do this, you could do this. And they were sending greeting cards to other people because we were all starved for connection. They were decorating home offices and kids' rooms because that's all we could do. We were stuck inside. And it was a huge boost for me to see that like maybe I could do this. And see myself as a maker of different things and maybe a viable business. So that's kind of how it started for me. And with my I already had Aaron West as a brand identity. I updated it a little bit, and it just felt really natural and easy.
Yeah, one of the things that I always sort of think and I say a lot is, you're a writer the minute you write something and you put it out into the world, right? You're a fashion designer the minute you create something and you sell it and you put it out into the world, right? And so like the minute you started, you said, I loved the materials. And so what I infer from that is, you loved the paint. You loved the essence of watercolor. The word ethereal is immediately because I relate to ethereal. I love Tinkerbell. She's my jam. But like it just immediately brings a visual to me, and not only a visual, an essence. And the whole time you're talking and you're saying these words, my eye is just driving to the painting off to your side, and it's telling the story as you're saying it. And so, yes, this is the thing, right? You can see it in your work, and I'm always really proud to hear people acknowledge their expertise because I think in the world that becomes, you're conceited, you think you're superior, and it's like, but if you're gonna be successful at anything, you have to be able to think, I think I might be good at this. I think that this might be okay. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
So I have a two-part answer to that. And
Sure.
one is that I'll say I never ever, I have always been a maker and a designer. And looking back, I can see that. But I
Mhm.
never thought of myself as an artist because to me, artists were painting the Mona Lisa. It was very, Renaissance and European and Christian and
Mm.
perfect and drawing and realistic. And I was never exposed to the weird stuff. I was never exposed to illustrators who drew like childlike things, but became somehow famous painters or designers with it. I didn't think I was capable. I can't draw realistic. I don't have good depth perception. Don't ask me to draw faces or hands.
Oh my,
But what I love and fell in love with watercolor and how it started to feel different than the design career where people are saying, we want this,
yeah.
do this, create this, solve this problem, give me this exact thing. It felt like play. And with watercolor, these particular types of inks, it feels very unpredictable. And so I liked that aspect of that imperfection of it, that unpredictability, that science experiment kind of aspect of it, that it's almost tougher to be an artist because it is harder to replicate each time. A good artist, they have that amazing craft. So I'm still working towards that repeatability of it because it is so unpredictable in its nature and it's moody. So it's hard you're never in the same mood the exact same time. Um,
Well, I
but
think,
I like
sorry.
that play aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point and something that was kind of touched on in a previous conversation I had with a fashion designer. Her name is Lauren Remesey, and she said, a part of her craft is accepting that it's developmental, right? She's a sustainable designer and she had to learn about sustainability. She didn't start out there. She had to learn about it. She had to learn that it was a part of her business model and it adapted over time. And, I think that where it kind of falls in with what I hear you're saying is we talk about this, Aaron, or we talk about this. We even talked about it yesterday. Art is in the eye, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And I think that, if it's an aspiration for yours to be someone who can replicate something very easily, then fine. But what I hear in the ethos of your brand is I like the science experiment, right? And a science experiment, it hardly ever turns out the same way every single time. Right. And that feels like that's at the ethos. That's like the essence of your brand is like, I like the unpredictable. And you even said it earlier, I had to be a little delusional to be an entrepreneur. And I think that people often maybe miss that mark. I think entrepreneurialism can be really over glamorized. It's wonderful to have your own schedule. I won't lie. But we also talk about, there's the late nights, like being up till 2 a.m. because it's your passion, right? And in a lot of sense, that is a little bit crazy because you're losing sleep and that affects how you mother, that affects how you relationship, that affects your energy and your health and your well-being. And finding time to fit in yoga, right? Finding time, did I eat today? Oh, I should go to sleep now. I've been working for 14 hours, that sort of thing. And I think that there's a line for entrepreneurialism that gets blended because the over glamorized image of being independent and able to make your own schedule is blurred out the fact that you got to be a little bit crazy and you got to be a little bit of a rebel to be able to say, I'm going to believe that I can do this. Because that's a daring, courageous act to be able to say, I'm going to leave this corporate job that I got paid better, as you said, than ever before. You had your security, you had your benefits, you were poised, you were
Yeah.
comfortable. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to be a little crazy and I'm going to do this, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a side to entrepreneurialism and being creative that maybe isn't supposed to be replicable. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think it's different for each artist. But I can tell you, what I really value out of my current iteration of my career is that I get to that I get to have first of all have an impact. I'm not sure I ever had an impact on anybody before, but I see it, I feel it. They tell it to me. I'm not removed from it in as much of a sense, especially doing these pop-up markets. For instance, I'll say, I don't sit down and try to make happy art. I'm not sitting down and thinking, what are the most joyful things I can paint? Or how do I make this more surreal? But people will come into my booth at these pop-ups where I just have my art plastered all over the walls and in front of them. And they tell me, wow, I feel so good. I just feel so happy in here. And they tell me these things that I mean, it caught me by surprise. The first time I ever heard it was a woman saying to her husband, what do you think about this one in the spot above the wall in the bedroom? And he's like, it's too happy. And he was just like, no, it's too happy. And it just gave me such a tickle. I'll never forget that because it was such a Seinfeld kind of moment. But I never heard that in my 15 to 20 years of my career that I was doing anything that gave people any kind of emotional response, and let alone something like that. So it's really cool to get that kind of feedback from people, even if it's just moment, even if they don't buy anything right there. Um, to know that that's somehow being transferred without my conscious endeavor or verbal understanding into the work that I'm creating and producing that kind of result.
Well, I think that that goes back to, what I pulled from your write-up about what you do, which is you want people to have that unified sensation in your work. And what you're telling us is that it's translating. People are finding themselves in your art. And I think that what I always think, and as I continue down my own journey of entrepreneurialism, is it's a passion project. It's a romance. Your relationship with your business is just like a relationship with a partner or a person. It's like, today I don't like you so much. I don't even like looking at you. And then all of a sudden you have that, oh, I miss you and I love you. And you feel warm and it's embrace. You feel seen. You feel like you find yourself in what you're doing. And to me, that's a romance, right? To me, when you're with a partner or a friend, it's like I find myself in you. I see some of myself in you, but you don't always overlap on all the same things and you have differences. And I think that that happens when you're an artist. And I think anybody who creates anything, in my opinion, is an artist.
Yeah, I hear people say, oh, I could never do that. I could never do what you do. I'm so not an artist. And I think that's just the voice I had that voice in my head for decades. And then I went to school for kind of art and I didn't learn it there. And I didn't necessarily learn it at my first couple of jobs. I had to find, first of all, permission to do the kind of art that excited me. And you're never going to find that if you can't do it or try it. And maybe everybody doesn't look, I hate sports. I don't like sports. Look, maybe there are some people who have that gene and they're just not like really art appreciators. But there's people who appreciate art and still don't think they could do it. And I think that's just the negative, the fear we all have, in not being able to do what our expectation is. But I think if you invite that play aspect in and you take the expectation out of it, it's like yoga. Yoga has helped my life so much as an artist and a person, especially as an artist with self-limiting beliefs. Because like the
Mhm.
more you're an artist, the more you have those it's a vicious cycle. But if you take the fear out of it and make it fun, then it doesn't matter if you're good at it. You'll do it more because it's fun. And then guess what? You're doing it more, you're getting good at it. So it works in that flow as well.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point, kind of pointing back to that rebellious nature and pointing to the conversation we're having of looking at the juxtaposition of things and really deciding where do you rest in the energy of the juxtaposition. And so for a rebel, rebels kind of come with that preconceived notion of you're defiant and you're disruptive with a negative sense, right? But in order to be a rebel, there's a lot of play involved. It's like, all right, I'm going to test this out, see what
Yeah.
happens there. And it's just a willingness, right? And if you're resting your energy in the disruptive place, the defiant place, the what will people perceive about me if I put myself out there and be visible place, who do I think I am place, then that is the place that you're going to come from with that mindset of I can or I can't. But if you pour your energy and you realize, you know what, I'm just trying to self-actualize. I'm just trying to get the most out of this human experience. I'm just trying to be in my flow, right? Yoga, and know that there are 15 or 20 other people in this room doing butterfly pose a different way, but this is how I do it. This is
Yeah.
how I play in this pose, right? And I think that that rebellious nature of allowing yourself to play has both sides, right? Like, again, going back to kind of childhood, it's like you're playing too much, you're not focused, right? And in this way, you kind of get to marry those two things. You get to play and be a little bit rebellious, but you get to be focused about what you're playing with.
Yes. Yeah, you have to be. Otherwise, it's just a great big hobby, or I mean it could be therapy. There's nothing wrong with that as well. But if you are trying to make it into a business and a career and sustainable, um, you do have to be organized. And it helps to have both of those sides, that left and right brain to your mind. Because honestly, every go on TikTok or Instagram, everybody will tell you how much more time they're spending on the back end
Yeah.
of analytics and outreach and I mean, even just me reordering supplies and taking inventory and buying new things and preparing for markets. None of that is really the artist's creation side of things.
So you kind of,
Exactly.
so you kind of put us into a question that I wanted to ask. And the question is, how does being an artist then challenge you to grow? As you're talking about, the admin, what I would just kind of group into like all the admin work that goes into being an entrepreneur, right? You're the social media director, you're the administrative assistant, you're the customer service representative. Like there's so much back office that goes into entrepreneurialism. And so in order to kind of be focused on your craft, that's like it's a very big important part of it, but sometimes it feels so small in comparison to everything else. So how
Yeah.
does being an artist challenge you to grow?
Honestly, that itself is probably the biggest challenge. Just dedicating the time to it because and here's where I think I'm beginning to crack the nut on this is that it's so much easier to quantify for instance washing the dishes because you saw the before and you see the after and you feel accomplished, you've gotten something done. And so I think a lot of the admin side of things is much easier to organize, prioritize, and quantify your success and progress than it is to get out the paintings and maybe do a piece of shit piece of art, which you have to allow yourself to be able to do.
Yeah.
Like as a writer, right? We were talking about this. You got to like for me, like if people aren't brainstorming some ideas and I've got a really bad, inappropriate idea, and I've got to say it because all the good ideas are going to get stuck behind it. Sometimes you've got to let it flow. You've got to be able to give yourself permission to practice, right? Like I feel like back to yoga, it's called yoga practice, not yoga perfect, right? So um,
Yes.
you can edit that and you can repaint something, but sometimes you just have to get an idea out. And it's harder sometimes to give myself the 2 hours to do that, because in 2 hours I know how many other things I can get done either around the house, for my kids, as a business owner. How many prints can I exacto and package for my next pop-up in that time? But I might be able to do like the first 2 hours of an unfinished painting that I'm then gonna have to come back to. It's like almost I've already have anxiety about having to come back and finish that because it's not done. So giving myself permission, like not even giving myself, forcing myself into it, because then I get into it and I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Oh, my kids are off the bus in 10 minutes. I don't want to stop. I don't want to clean up. My paints are going to dry. And so then I don't want to stop what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I want to pick this back up tomorrow, but damn, I have to do that other thing again tomorrow so that I can be ready for my event on Saturday. So once I get started, I don't want to stop it. And then once I stop it, I don't have a studio big enough that it's just a big painting. Like, have you ever really been to a painter studio? Those places
Yes.
are messes, and there's
Yes.
like 15 different palettes, and 10 of them need washing, and then 2 of them are clean. And so they've got paper out everywhere. And my watercolor, it's flat. I don't
Mhm.
have easels because my medium is very wet and it drips and it pools, and that's the greatness of it. So I don't have any easels, and you can only put it up or away once it's fully dry. And those are the logistics that go into it. And so I guess that's probably my biggest challenge um, as as a business owner who wants to feel progress, right? Who's
Yes.
addicted to like being prepared and getting things done, and like analyzing the business side of it. So sometimes making sure that I'm creating that space to explore and play and make something terrible if it just comes out that way.
Yeah, so here you're talking about boundaries, right? Like everybody has all these responsibilities in their lives, right? Like your mom, your wife, you're the dishwasher, you're all of these things and they're important to you. But as we talked about before, this is also a part of your romance because there's a whole Erin identity that isn't just mom, isn't just wife, isn't just dishwasher, laundry folder, whatever it is. There's another aspect of you that needs to get fed mentally, emotionally, and physically. That's your individual person. And as far as being a person and owner, completely separate of that, as just being Erin, who is a separate person, sometimes it's challenging to carve out those boundaries. And the great part of that, though, and sometimes a challenging part of that, is giving yourself permission to just fuck around, right? You're like, okay, I don't know what this is going to be like, but I have to keep practicing because this is my purpose. And I think that that's where people get pushback in their own profession or their own, desire to be an artist and to play and to be an entrepreneur and to really go for anything in life is that, you have to really be committed to be bad at something in order to also be good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've accepted a lot of failure, and I don't look at failure as a negative thing. I mean, I honestly have so many things going on. Some of them are just going to have to fail just out of like statistically,
Mhm.
So I just try to target my failures, like first line of defense. I can't fail at being a mom.
Mhm.
So that means my business is coming on the back burner, and you don't want to see my house because I try to prioritize my business over like, sponging the baseboards. But yeah, failure, I can't succeed at everything. I have too many ideas. I just try to target them so that they are smart, so that that I'm allowing things to fall through the cracks purposefully and knowledgeably about what my opportunities are and what my limitations and boundaries are.
Mhm.
Um, and having a more realistic view of that, because yeah, I want to say yes to everything and I have a lot of ideas. And looking back on the last 15 years, I'm giving myself more permission that all my greatest ideas don't happen on day one or day two. That's something sometimes things need to simmer for 5 years while I do things. um,
Oh,
Because in 5 years, my kids are going to be much older and they're
sure.
maybe not going to want me to cook eggs for them in the morning. And so and I want this marriage, this romance I have with my career, I want it to be lifelong out of passion. And it will probably need to be out of financial reasons. But it brings me to my community too. And so, like, it is a big part of my capacity. It's passion alone by myself in my office, but it's passion when I share it and connect with others, which is really the exciting part of it for me. But yeah, it's going to be there in the long run. So, like, the mothering job will change dramatically in the next 15 years for me. So,
Mhm.
I'm trying to not lose sight of those things and really
Yes.
take advantage of what really is the priority because I can have anxiety about not moving as quickly as I would like on my ideas and having expectations of myself that I think are perfectly reasonable and realistic, but I have to give myself grace.
Yeah, and also, that's specific to you, right? And how somebody else chooses to live their entrepreneurialism and artistry is specific to them. There's really no mold. I think that that's important to recognize in anybody. Like, there's no mold for anything. It's what you subscribe to, what makes most sense for you. And what I also hear you pointing to is, talking about in the next 5 to 10, however many years, your relationship to your kids is gonna be different. They're not gonna be this age forever. You have that awareness in your mind. You're not gonna be this age forever. And the same thing I believe goes true for our businesses. It's important to reflect and be honest with yourself about what season you're in your business. Like if you're starting out and you're like, I should have had, 15 different sales and 25,000 followers already, if that's your ambition, great. And if that's what you're aspiring for, great. But if that's not what's happening for you, have a really honest conversation with yourself about what's manageable for me so that I can also be happy in my life. Like this is not a trade-off between I want to be happy and successful in a business, so I'm going to sacrifice my happiness everywhere else. It's about finding some cohesion, excuse me, so that the blending of your life makes sense and is stable for you. And that's to me what Dirty Pretty is all about. Look at these competing opposites that happen everywhere with everyone all the time because we're all different. We're all experiencing different seasons of our life. And we're all different ages. We all have different personalities. So what's stabilizing for you may not be what's stabilizing for me, right? And another person and the next person and so on and so forth. So I think that the next question that I want to ask you then is, given everything that you've said already, what has being an artist, something that you haven't said, what has being an artist revealed to you about yourself?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one. I think how much I need the connection to other people.
Mm.
I think that's probably my where I'm getting that emotional exchange in the relationship of the art. It's nice to put it down on paper. That feels good, but I mean that could be a hobby, but and one that makes me feel good, one that I enjoy. But I think it's that relationship the art has with the other person and their emotional exchange to the art. That's where I think the currency really is for me more so than my career as a designer. I would say designer has been a fun career. It's just a fun job. It's a really fun job. Cool people, um, lots of opportunity, easier to navigate through opportunities that other people are presenting to you, I think. But as an artist, if you're really going it alone, you've got to have your reason why. And so I guess that would be my reason why.
Yeah, so and you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is just a curiosity that my brain was like, It's like my coach brain, right? It's like it's insatiable. But what I heard you say about it's the connection with other people and really gelling what I hear with their energy, right? Where your energy overlaps with them is it's satiating, it's nurturing for you. My curiosity was, is there a part of Erin that feels like they're relating to her, right? There's a piece of you in every single piece that you create. And so my curiosity was, is that a way of her to feel like they're actually getting to know her?
Yeah, yeah, I spent so much of my career trying to look like something else, like trying to look like what other people want, what they expect. And so being able to do something that's different, that's a little bit wonky, that's a little bit not right, that isn't perfect or how they've already seen it 10 times out in the world and them relating to that, that is much more personal. It's much more personal for me. And then to hear them say those things about it is kind of funny because I just don't, it wasn't my intention, it wasn't my purpose, it wasn't conscious that I was putting that kind of emotion into it.
It
And I
sounds
think
daring to me. Like it sounds daring, like speaking up, because you said, what people are used to, the aesthetic they're used to, the perspective they're used to. I think about different artists, like when realism came around, right? When all these different types of artistry came around, it wasn't something that they were used to. And so it was a challenge. It's a challenge in a conversation. It's introducing a different way of thinking into a conversation. And this seems to be a very common theme in these conversations I'm having. So that's insightful. But yeah, it's you standing up and actually being visible. That's
yeah.
daring.
It is, and it's very vulnerable feeling. But I heard some great advice for illustrators that like if you think you're bad at drawing or painting, just paint a whole bunch of things and then you can call it your style. Like you don't have to be good, you don't have to look like this or be realistic. You just have to kind of believe in yourself. You have to like it. But if you repeat it enough, people will see the consistency and you start to have the essence of the artist with the whole collection or breadth of the styles. I think that's great advice for anybody who thinks that like they would like to try it but don't have the chops or have the education or experience or can't do it to their expectation. I had to adjust my expectation to be able to accept what I was capable of and be willing to listen, I guess, to some ideas from other people, but approach them through my perception and not their expectation. And that's where some interesting things happen because my ideas sometimes are limited. So sometimes I like getting ideas from other people like what excites you? What would you like to see? Not that I take all requests, but I love that collaboration, essence where we're really like building something new and exciting together that you wouldn't be doing on your own and I wouldn't be doing on my own. And that's like the birth of creation. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and that's what's exciting for me because for those of you watching, I have aspirations to have Erin make a custom piece of artwork. So commissioning her is available. But I love that you said too, there are things that maybe you're asked to do or come your way that you're like, that's not really congruent with who I am. And that kind of fits in with what you said, and I'm paraphrasing it is, do what you do and call it your style. Like that's great. Like that's a quote. That's amazing. Because a part of that is also accepting being disliked.
Yeah.
Accepting
Yes.
that you're not going to get got. People are gonna be like, I don't get this. It does not translate. And being like, that's okay. And not wearing it, not making it deter you from having your voice. And as you said, being visibly vulnerable.
Yeah, I get that once in a while at the pop-up markets. I'll get a certain type of customer who's just different. Most people will just, that's the great thing about pop-up markets is they can look at it and be like, no, I don't want to go in there. And they
That's
just walk
right.
on by and they don't, it's not like leaving a negative comment under your photo or anything. Um, but I've had some people come in and be like, it's a lot, or or be like, oh, it's cute, but I don't know where it would fit in with my beige, and I I just I think it's cool. I think it's cute. Like I can get sometimes those little subtle passive hints that like it's not for them. Because most of the people who it's not for them, they don't have to come in and say anything. But once in a while I'll get that. But thankfully I get enough of the people who are refreshed when they see it, who it does jive for them. It does not have to appeal to everybody. I think the hard part in business is finding the people who want your
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
That's the hard part because I guarantee you somebody wants your stuff. Somebody wants it. Even if I don't like it, even if you're not sure about it, somebody's gonna want it and would pay for it and most of the time. And the hard part is finding them in the first place and then consistently.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's interesting too, because sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes you release something and you're like, I don't really know how this is going to go. And then people are wild about it. And you're like, okay, that was shocking. But then you learn something and you learn something about the people that are following you. And I think it's worth reiterating what you said. And again, I'm just paraphrasing is like, people aren't gonna always like you. They're not always gonna get you. They're like, I've heard it myself, like, you're so intense. Like, you're just saying it too directly. It's too in your face. It's making me feel like this. And it's like, I get it. I understand, right? But you have to hold close to your perspective and your intention and be honest with the essence of your energy because that's really, you're attracting who you are, right? That's you're casting a net and being like, more of this, please, because this is what makes sense to me. This is what feels good to me. And so, on that note, why would you caution people? We're getting to the dirty. Why would you caution people away from being an artist?
Well, I guess there's so many ways to be an artist. So I think there's a lot of nuance in that. If you want to make art just for you and you don't want to hear how it makes people feel, or if you don't want an art director to tell you to do it better or do it different, I think there's definitely room for art and artists outside of the professional realm. Like, sometimes like I loved dance. Dance was so therapeutic for me. I don't know that I was good enough to make it a career, but I decided that maybe I wouldn't like it as much if I had to make it my bread and butter, and that I really enjoyed it for the feeling it gave me and not as a career because it changes your relationship to the thing once you need the thing to pay for all your things. And so um, and I think that can complicate our relationship with art, and art at its foundation can be therapeutic. So I think that is something you need, that self-awareness. I think,
Mm,
again, whether you're an artist or any other kind of career, this honesty and self-awareness and authenticity. I think you haven't necessarily maybe said that word, but like this whole thing is about your essence and being true to you and delivering the energy that you want to receive and feels effortless. If you're trying to create ease in your life, you want to find that true voice and try to follow it in the way that you can. So it's complicated. It really, I think, requires listening to you. It is hard to make a living as an artist. It takes a lot of relationships with other people. You either have to have a relationship with a gallery or a direct relationship with your buyers or a relationship with a client, a company who's going to hire you, people who need their wedding stationery designed. You have to, like, I have an artist friend in Brooklyn who is far more talented than me, in my opinion. She's another watercolor artist. She's a textile designer. We have a similar career path, and in my world, she's 10 times better than me. But she looks at me and she's like, wow, you make it look so easy to get out there and talk to people. She
mm,
doesn't like to talk to people. She's more of the true introverted artist. And it would be a huge toll on her energy at the end of the day after a market to get out there and like put yourself out there and talk to people. So for me, it's perfect. Like, it is the biggest jive for me. Like, that's my biggest moneymaker, honestly, in return for energy is that public interface. But I know that would be hard for her, but she's a phenomenal artist and has found her career path making money in other ways. So I think that's a tough one because it's like I didn't get here on day one. It's like I graduated college 20 years ago, and each step has been its own layer, and it kind of went this way and then it kind of went this way. So again, like what you were saying, you have to look at the whole of your career and allow some self-honesty, the room to pivot and reflect and change, adapt, because I can tell you now, all the people who I think are successful artists are grumbling about Instagram no longer being a huge reliable revenue source for them because of the nature of social media changing.
the
And
algorithms.
none of us can control that. And I'm sure that's affecting more than just artists.
Yeah,
Um, but if all of these things don't scare you away, then do it because then yeah, then you're the real deal, right? And yeah, you have to be a little bit fearless, maybe a little bit delusional. You have to be resourceful. It
Mhm.
helps if you like people because relationships are important. And then yeah, be willing to suck and then just keep wanting to get better at anything like you do, whether you're a singer or you make websites or you cut hair. Nobody wants you to suck, but like I would, that's why I'm not a hair stylist because I'm not willing to be bad at that. Like, you
That's
know,
great. Yeah, that's a
I was
great point.
I was never, that's not something I want to fail at. Like I can fail at other things, but
I really enjoy that you pointed out the juxtaposition again of people often are like, well, I'm an introvert, I can't do that. And I really appreciate that you pointed out that your friend is and she does. And she does it in her way. Her way doesn't have to mirror Erin's way, who Erin is a very warm energy. And I'm sure you can tell, those of you watching this, and she just kind of draws you in. I don't know. I saw her in yoga. I was like, we're gonna be friends. We drew to each other, I think, because we're both sort of that type of energy of we're very curious about people and we thrive in finding the nuances of things. And so I think that what I hear your overarching theme is, make sure that when you commit to something that you love it in a way that it's going to be able to love you back. And again, this goes back to that romance theme, right? Like, I've been with my husband for, God, I don't even know, like 18, 19 years at this point, and we're still learning each other. And nothing shocks me more than that. I'm just like, how can I not know everything about you already? Like, this is crazy. But that is the thing I also love. And at the same time, he hurts my feelings, he disappoints me, and the same can be true of me for him. But at the end of the day, and through the anthology of our relationship, no matter what, he loves me the way that I want to be loved. And I think that that true statement can be applied to whatever you do. If you're fine just phoning it in, which is another topic we talked about in a different conversation of Dirty Pretty, then be fine with that. But acknowledge that you're choosing that contentment. And if you understand, that you're not fine with that, then you have to take the peaks and the valleys. You have to be willing to be frustrated. You have to be willing to suck, as we keep pointing out here. And you have to be willing to understand that that's not a complete and full definition of you, right? You aspire, your larger vision is an aspiration to be or achieve some level of excellence in your craft. Understanding that's going to be an ongoing process, right? And I think that that is what you commit to in any relationship. Understanding that where you start on day one isn't going to be when you're in year 20, right? And allowing that to be, allowing that expectation to develop and really being kind to yourself about that, really being empathetic to yourself about that, and really standing strong in that. So if somebody comes to you and asserts, you're not doing it the right way, I don't like your art, or it's not going to work, it doesn't hit you as hard. Of course, it hits you. You're a person and you have feelings. Create that expectation, but also establish the awareness of this is just not for them. It doesn't mean it's not for anyone. It's just not for them.
Yeah, art is personal. And yes, but whatever you're doing, you don't have to be for everybody. That's what's the saying? Like, you're not tacos. You can't expect everyone to love you. So,
Corn tortillas or flour tortillas?
oh, you know what?
Oh, oh, oh,
I lived in Los Angeles for 18 years, but I am still an old school crunchy lettuce taco. My local joint is so good. Coconut margaritas to die for. But yeah, I get a like a crunchy fish, kind of a fried fish one. And it's corn. No, it's flour tortilla. But
I'm the same as you. Scott is like flour tortilla all day long. And if I see a corn tortilla on a menu, because I love tacos as well, it's like a little happy dance. I'm like, corn tortillas, because I like the crunch. I'm a crunchy type of girl.
yeah, I like the crunch. I like the crunch. That's good. But I would, as much as I love tacos, I would just live and die on chips and salsa. So it's the crunch. Yeah.
So, and it's very similar conversation I had with my friend Lauren, who was on here. You're also my friend. And the same thing I said to her, I'll say to you is I'm learning things about you real time. And that's also why I enjoy having these dirty, pretty conversations because I'm like, I am a chips and dip girl too. Like I could fill up on chips, salsa, guac, queso, like that's it. It's over. So, with both likes and dislikes, pulling it back in and the things that you've revealed that, you love about this, how it opens you up, how it's revealed yourself to you, how it's helped you to be connected with others, the difficulties, the unexpected, the unpredictable nature of it, with both likes and dislikes about being an artist, besides money. Besides funding your life and paying for the things, as you pointed out, why do you sustain this? Why do you continue to pursue this, knowing the dirty, pretty challenges of this career path?
I don't have a lot of play in my life. I don't have a lot of play in my life. I'm very grown I mean, I'm not very grown up. I'm not super grown up, but I am. I feel like, again, not everybody's a mom, but just being an adult. It's a lot of responsibilities. It's a lot of expectations. And I don't know if it's something about me specifically. I'm not good at play. I'm not super great at playing with my kids. I don't love video games. I've always hated card games my whole life. Maybe I have an addiction to feeling progress. I don't know what it is. So I think I had to recognize in the last couple of years, as I've looked at what does it mean, not just to be a designer, but to be an artist, that is probably the biggest development in my relationship to myself that I really only find through the art that I make. And then I get to share it and connect with other people is amazing. But I'm good at connecting with other people. And if it wasn't over my art, I would just probably find some, I would sell toilets for a living and be like, these toilets are amazing. And I would connect with people over them. But I wouldn't really. But I love to, I think I have a neighbor that does toilets. So that's always a good handy example for me. Because I think like how different we must be. But it's really that relationship to myself, that ability to play, that opportunity to love myself, to accept myself, to give myself the permission to explore and grow and do things that like I didn't think I could do, surprise myself because my first inclination is to say I can't do that. And I think that has been, I guess, the best, most, I don't know, foundational part of how I've grown in this career just as a person.
So it continues to challenge you to challenge yourself, and you like that. And I'm making a mental note that if I wake up in the middle of the night and I see you on an infomercial selling toilets or whatever it is, I'll be like, she did it. She finally did it. So, what final thoughts do you have to add to those watching? Anything you'd like to say in general? What would you
Oh
like
yeah.
to close with?
Oh, my favorite advice that is new for me since learning under Lizzie Hoffman to get my yoga certification because she's I'm sure she didn't come up with it. It's like an old yoga quote. I don't know, but you notice without judgment. And that was foundational for me in how I look at myself and how I look at the other people around me that maybe disappoint me or upset me or whatever. It's the nauseating advice that I give my kids that they're, they're going to have in their voice for the rest of, in their head for the rest of their life is my voice saying that. I tell my yoga students, my senior citizens that I teach to. I just think to me that's the best life advice that I think I've ever gotten. It's just like
Yes.
short and sweet, and you don't have to explain it, and anybody can apply it any different way. And it's hard to do. I think
Oh,
we all need to hear it.
yes, because again, that's the dirty pretty, right? There's that your own devil's advocate in your head being like, am I full of shit? Am I an asshole here? Is it the asshole me this time? Right? And I really appreciate that. And Ram Dass has a very similar quote or a similar saying that he often said, which is, how can I love myself more and judge myself less? And he also applies that to how can I love other people more and judge them less? So that's such a beautiful note to close this on. But to wrap it up, I want to ask you, what do you have coming up? Where can people find you and get more of you?
Yeah, thank you. You can find my work on Etsy. Local Charlotte friends can come to a number of pop-ups that they can find listed on my social media, or you can join my newsletter for that. And I'm just planning more great art, more great events for the year, thinking about, maybe teaching in the future and how I could add that to my capacity in all the little buckets that I'm filling and then available for commissions. So if anybody wants to reach out, I would love to collaborate.
Beautiful. So what is your Etsy? What's the name of your Etsy? Where can they find you?
Oh, it's going to be Aaron West all together is the name of the shop. AARYNWEST. So Aaron, a little bit different than how you're used to seeing it. And they should be able to find everything on there.
And what's your Instagram handle?
Again, Aaron West.
And that's AARYN for those again. And what's your website so that they can go and maybe commission
Yeah,
you?
the website will show you more of especially like the long history in fashion textiles that I've had. That's aaronwest.com. So nice and sweet. I got that domain forever. So that'll be updated soon to include a lot of the newer painting work and fine art branding photo session that I had recently. But it will lead you to all of the great sites as well. So that'll lead you to my retail opportunities.
Go check her out. Thank you for being here and sharing your beautiful energy and ethereal essence with us, my friend.
Thank you, Shannon. I love what you're doing, and this was amazing. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Hmm. And thank you for watching or listening. Until next time, be good to yourself for fuck's sake. Live an honest life in the dirty pretty of you and choose to do the next right thing. Bye.
Bye.